So let me tell you the story of my lift table. It's right here. This was actually a hospital table that Kay had, and I took it off her hands, and it needed some love. I'll show you that the top was in bad shape. It needs some tender love and care. I'll clean it up a bit, and it's got old ball casters, which I may try to replace if I can figure out how to get them off and do something a little more conventional. But my intention is to use this on the channel as a bit of a lectern and a workspace so that I can not be working on the floor. The other thing that I've been using is this rolling tool cart, which I will be putting my 3D printer on in a couple of days. Hopefully it will ship this time, and we can start a whole new chapter in our existence, our lives together, based on some of the stuff that I'm going to do there. So this is my activities around the lift table right here. So this is a hospital table. It's a little rough, but it's made to slide under a bed, and it lifts just by lifting up on it. And then it lowers by that little bar right there. And this crock on top weighs 20 pounds. It lifts it up without any problem. Going to do a restoration of it. So I finally got the top off of the table, and I'm coming back to actually work on the thing. So as I mentioned before, it's about 1 inch thick. It's particle board with some laminate and some little trim. It's seen some better days. It hasn't been kept in the best environment. It's got 2 attachment points here and 2 attachment points here. I cheated. I went to the big box store and I bought one of these guys, which is a project panel. This is made out of pine and is pretty close to the same size. So what I'll do is I'll transfer the holes over to this, make the holes, and then we can attach it. But instead of doing it just the same size, I wasn't really happy with what they called an inch thick. That is not an inch thick. It's, if you're pushing 3/4, maybe. And with the attachments, the fasteners that are currently here, I'm going to take those over and use them again. I wanted a little bit more body, and why not go bigger? So this will be the base layer for the new top to attach directly to the table, but I'm going to laminate it with, it's hanging off the screen, it's bigger. So this is another panel, which is pine, and this is 3/4 by 20 by 4 feet, and I am going to cut it down so you can see the significant difference. I'm not going to use all 48 inches of it. I actually did take both of these pieces, lay it on top of the table, squeeze the mechanism to move it up and down, and it was just about buoyant. It didn't necessarily want to fall, and it didn't want to easily rise up. The smaller board by itself on the table was not enough weight to hold it down, so it does need to be a little bit heavier. So the combination of these two. Now, if you look at the difference in the size of the boards, you can see barely. Here, let me do it this way. Since my original and the smaller piece is roughly the same size, what I'm going to do is center this up so that I'm going to glue these together and laminate it, and I'll cut it off. This is actually 37.5 inches, which is a very bizarre dimension. It's 16 inches wide, which is a little bit more standard. This is 16 inches wide with 3 feet, which is 36 inches. So that extra 1.5 inches really doesn't make a lot of sense. But neither one of these pine boards are an inch thick. again, I don't want the fasteners to go way through it. The smaller one didn't have enough weight to keep the table down. So if I combine the two, laminate them together, have a little bit of an overhang, which would be nice for clamping if I wanted to clamp something to it without having to do the double thickness, I can do that, and then maybe extend this out to about 40 inches in length, which would be a bit more of a quasi-standard. It's only going to gain 2.5 inches in total length on the table, which isn't a huge amount, but it'll allow me to over the smaller boards. I only have a 3/4 inch lip all the way around that I could easily clamp stuff to without excessive clamps. Additionally, like I said, this will give me a little extra weight for the buoyancy to keep it from floating up and down. I'll get the holes transferred and we'll drill some holes. So I was going to be fancy. I had bought these dowel kit, which has got these little transfer pins. I was going to put in the hole and transfer the old holes to the new table top, but the holes aren't big enough to take this tiny little thing. So I've just left the bolts, screws in the old tabletop. I'll line the sides up and then give it a tap with a mallet. Nothing fancy. So I had a thought. Instead of making it very difficult and trying to mark a hole from the underside using the bolts, I thought, let me position my new top underneath the old top, which is pretty close, and I'll just drill down from the back side for the actual holes. I'm going to make them the same size. You can see that there's two different types of screws here. This one's got a very thick wood screw, thread, sorry, and this has got a much finer, like a machine screw thread, which doesn't make a lot of sense. And additionally, I found a couple of additional holes for support. I mean, there are the two up here. This one's in the middle, and it actually matches up. You can kind of see the shape of the metal member. My phone reminding me. So we've got two on this end, one in the middle, and then two on the other end. And I think what I'll do is I'll drill these out from the backside, like I said, here. And then instead of just using a coarse thread, I'll probably do a wood insert. Well, I am going to do a wood insert and then use similarly sized bolts into the insert with washers to help snug it all up. So to replace the seemingly mismatched screws, there were two of these on this end and there were two of these on that end. I have opted for threaded inserts with just a standard bolt. And so there are my holes transferred. And now I'll clean this up and put the inserts in. I'll put this on top and drill through so I don't mess up my new floor. Now this old piece can go away. So one of the things I run into is this has a slot going across it. It's the only ones that the hardware store had. They do make some that have a hex head in it that are easier to turn, but all of my screwdrivers are too narrow to fit in those slots. So what I'm going to opt to try is the actual bolt in the thread, and then I'll drive it smartly with a socket and an impact driver. Fingers crossed. There goes the first one. Well, that didn't work. Alright, so it didn't work the best, but it did thread the board well enough that I could get this in there with a regular screwdriver after it was in there. So I'm going to pre-thread the holes with this and then sink them in with a regular screwdriver. If this doesn't work, I'll pull them out because I'm going to test fit this to the base. I'll pull them out and I'll just put in some T-nuts from the back side, which will be laminated with the true top that I'm going to use. Alright, so that wasn't absolutely the best solution, but it worked. A solution is a solution. It worked, so the threads are in there. Now I can attach it to the base. We'll give it a test fit. Alright, so now all I've got to do is line up the holes. And I'm going to put a washer on here just because that's what I've always kind of done. Exciting stuff. I know I'm working on an table. Now we're there. Now that is a long awaited for work surface for me to present from. Now this needs a little bit of weight to keep it from just floating up. There. Now I can put the weight on it. But I'll put it at a reasonable height. Sorry, keep looking at, don't look at myself, look at the camera. There, that's locked into place. It wants to float because the other top was heavier than this. So I want to put the other top on it to make it a little bit bigger. And I'll get that glued up and clamped. I'll let that dry for a couple of days. Gravity. Alright, so both sides have knots, which is fine. This one looks a little bit worse with holes. And again, this is meant to take some abuse, but I'm going to put this side up. And I'm going to determine how big I want this thing, because it's really, really big. And it's a little too heavy for the mechanism, but the mechanism needs to be cleaned up a little bit. And it was intended over here on this side. This is where the handle is for it to fall and raise. So, probably going to shorten this up. Probably cut off these knots because they're the least attractive. But for length, I'm still probably going to give it about an inch overhang. I can still reach the handle. Just way down there, I can work on something tall. I can work on something short. Now just to figure out the dimensions. Nope, those clamps aren't deep enough. Alright, so I'm going to clean up some of the shards that are now all over my shirt, and going to work on measuring some of this stuff. This is exciting! This has taken several months where it was supposed to take a couple of days, but you know, life. So this is the top piece of the work table, and I'm going to measure this off and measure it and cut it down to size. I don't know how far it is. Wait. I'm going to round all these over, and this is the top anyway. Oh. And so I cut off that end to get rid of this big knot, and most of that knot, and most of that, which is then, there was a big hole back here, so this is the prettier part, or what remains. Hi. So cutting all of this stuff off, this left the prettier side for the top to use to work with. Now I'm going to rip an inch off of each side, which sounds a little goofy. But on this side over here, you can see that there's a big knot. Plus this is also, there's only about 1/8 of an inch of material from where they cut this panel down on that side. Oh, and if I were to take the full 2 inches off of this side, it would come to right about here, which then I would be afraid that this knot would blow out. So I'm going to cut it in the middle and hope for the best. Now on this side, if I were to cut 2 inches off, where they have seamed this together, I would end up with again, a very small part. So I'd be afraid that that would blow out. So what I'm going to do is split the difference and do 1 inch off of each side. I'm going to cut it a little wide. Alright, so that should meet my dimensional needs. So I'm going to use an 1/8 inch round over just to soften the top edge and maybe the corners, and then the bottom of the base piece as well. So I bought a set of these guys, blocks to measure either table saw or it's offset. So I'm going to use this for the router bit. I've never used these before. They're brand new. Get that new car smell. And so that's an 1/8 inch. This is 1/8 inch round over. I'm going to use this for setup. Well, that worked. Really didn't need that. All I needed was a flat edge. This is a little trim router, because I'm not doing anything heavy. I'm going to route or trim the top and the bottom and you can't see that, the corners as well, just to soften them up. So I feel good about that. And I'm just gonna smooth this down and then smooth off the top while I wait for the glue to dry. I told you it was gonna be quick. So this is the top side because I have a pencil mark, which you can't see. Just right. And since I have sanded off my registration mark, I will write on the bottom, this is the bottom, so that I don't mess that up. Alright, gonna glue this bad boy up. Glue's a little cold. That's good enough. Great use for an old gift card or credit card or business card. Use this to scrape and spread the glue out. Alright, put this on at the bottom. Down. It's an inch, which means the other side's at least an inch. And that doesn't really matter. Just 1 inch back here. It's kind of sort of square. Now I will clamp it down. It's one of the reasons for leaving it an inch. Leaving an inch around the edges so I can clamp to it if I need to. Oh, look at that. Clamped, now we wait. clamps. Here it is finished with 4 or 5 coats of polyurethane oil-based stain. Natural satin. So I thought I would give you a wrap-up on this project. It took a lot longer than I expected. I started it back in September. I got to come back around to it in November, and then wrapped it up as much as I could in December, and now it's in January, and I still didn't get to do everything I needed to do. I probably will do some more stuff. I still want to replace the casters. I still want to clean it up. You can't see it, but the base there is chromed, and it's got some rust. We'll see what happens when I clean it up. I may paint it. Who knows? As you saw in some of the clips, the mechanism was a little, it was squeaky and made a lot of noise, particularly when you squeeze the handle and it would bounce and it would slip. It probably needs lubricating. I haven't even bothered to look up into the shaft of the thing to see how I do that. But if I do, I'll make a video and post it here. So thanks for sticking around. This is the longest video I've ever made, and it was edited down to this length, so there was much more footage. But nobody cares that much to watch me do this kind of stuff. So if you hung around this long, thanks. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next time. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.
Too many hobbies, not enough time.
It's a theme song, y'all.